representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
I feel like 2024 is going to be magical.
And welcome to this edition of FOF Live, presented by Burger and Hicks. As always, you can check out Burger and Hicks on their website, Instagram, TikTok, and we'll have their phone number down below for you to contact them. And for those watching, we have a packed show for you guys here today. But first, let me introduce the panel. We have myself, Daniel Rodriguez. We have Eli, Kevin. We have Alex Krutchik. And joining us from the ballpark, Mr. Nate. Fellas, what you could say last 24, 12, 5, 3 hours it's been for the Marlins, coming off a series split against the Phillies. 2 players announced for the futures game, and the biggest news so far for them in the past 24 hours was recently today the news of Tim Anderson being DFA'd. Signed with the Marlins earlier in the offseason for $5 million. Tried to be somewhat of a bounce-back player. Marlins were hoping to buy low on him for 1-year deal, see if he can turn back the clock to batting champ, all-star caliber ways when he was with the White Sox, but ended up being more of the same of last year than the year before that. Eli, what happened to Tim Anderson? What went wrong with Tim, and can you believe he has a chance to be back in the majors at all after this, or is this his final stop in his career?
You touched on it. He was a textbook bounce back, change of scenery candidate all in one, put in the most miserable circumstances possible last year with the White Sox. And from on the field, off the field, to the infamous fight with Jose Ramirez and getting on the wrong end of that, he just needed something new. He needed to get healthy again. And Miami just seemed like the ideal landing spot for a 30-year-old former All-Star, former batting champ to regain some semblance of his old self, especially given an opportunity to be basically the everyday shortstop on this team, despite how much he struggled last year. So he was just put in ideal circumstances, and somehow he was even worse this year than he was in 2023. There were just very fleeting moments of encouragement. On opening day, I think his very first at-bat as a Marlin, an RBI double. There was a walk-off hit not that long ago. That picture is only from less than 2 weeks ago, the previous homestand. It was really recent that he was experiencing some good times. There were little glimmers in there where you just, you saw a player that could fill this massive void that was a big weakness last year. They made the postseason despite awful shortstop production last year. And again, somehow, just across the board, one of the worst players in baseball. I think I have it here, just the lowest wins above replacement in the majors for position players this season. There he is, near the bottom. This is a group of guys, I think half of them have either missed time with injury or they've already been cut. You see Jose Abreu, you see Yan Gomes, you see a couple players on the White Sox. Not a surprise that the team that is far and away the worst team in baseball has multiple of these guys in terms of negative wins above replacement. But then there's Tim Anderson right in there. Negative 1.2 WAR. It was just the really toxic combination of having no plate discipline, having no power, and not really even being consistent enough defensively. I really feel like his last game was the final straw, I think this was getting close either way, but just the way that last game ended with him being in the middle of a pretty crucial error. And then at the very end of the game, chasing a non-competitive pitch out of the zone to strike out and make the final out. It's just a microcosm of his Marlins stint right here. So it's tough to know exactly when to pull the cord, because as we'll get into, like, there's still a massive question in terms of what this team is going to do at the shortstop position moving forward. It's a really uncomfortable spot to be in, to have no idea who the shortstop of the future is going to be with this organization, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, whether it's any years down the road. It's a tough spot, but I think, even all things considered, that this was a worthy gamble to take, a low risk, high reward deal that paid off zero reward, but it was a low risk, all things considered. And ultimately, the organization just turns the page and goes in-house looking for anything else before taking a really hard look at the shortstop position moving into 2025 and beyond. Just didn't work out. And we can't really dwell on this all that much.
Yeah, and as bad as he was a class act person in the clubhouse, great person to talk to, spoke every single time, except the last day as a Marlin, coincidentally. I think that we could share it, but he did decline a comment following the Phillies game. Yeah, I mean, just a great person. He did hold it up for the most part defensively, despite what you saw that last play. There was obviously here and there he had some really bad errors, but analytically it wasn't horrible. So yeah, just wishing him nothing but the best. But yeah, I mean, I think you kind of touched on it, Eli. I mean, you gave the guy $5 million. You weren't losing much. You weren't going to be very competitive this season. This was a year for him to kind of rebuild his value, or even reinvent himself in some ways. He hadn't hit a home run in God knows how long. And I kind of looked like he was going to be a singles hitter from here on out, a singles merchant. He was getting a little bit lucky, as our good friend Alex Carver's noted multiple times. But yeah, unfortunately, just didn't work out for him. And well, the opportunity is now for Xavier Edwards to really prove himself that he could be a big leaguer. He's joining this team right before the All-Star break, and he has the opportunity to play every single day, as Skip said today during his pregame scrum. You're muted, Daniel.
Sorry, I was talking. I was going to ask Nate, how are the vibes in the clubhouse? You're there without TA. Have you asked any of the other players how it feels like with TA? Maybe his presence, any words about him, and then also maybe Skip's thoughts on the DFA as well.
Yeah, Skip noted that he never met Tim before the season, but he did say that, going into the season, Tim Anderson had, certain allegations or rumors about him being, a toxic guy in the clubhouse, maybe for the White Sox last season before. That was all put to rest. Skip echoed that he was a great guy the entire season. Guys that I talked to, I mean, everyone said the same thing. He was a great leader for a team that needed a veteran leader going into the season. Yeah, he's going to be missed as a leader, I'd say. It's very unfortunate that he couldn't really just get it done. I wrote the article on him back in the offseason of him, what we could expect for him. I thought it was an injury thing last season, but it's just, I don't know, he's kind of just lost his form, and it's sad to see, but like I said, great guy. It is just unfortunate. Skip noted, again, that he was he hated to see it happen, but it now opens the door for Xavier Edwards. And one more thing I will note about this, it goes along with what happened with Avi Garcia, with Christian Bethencourt. The Marlins front office is, compared to what we've seen in the past, they're cutting dead weight. The guys aren't producing. They're going to invest more so into the future, bring guys up like Edwards, like Ollie Sanchez, like Dane Myers, give them a shot, because they're over 20 games under 500 now. So I will tip my cap to the Marlins front office that they're cutting ties with those type of guys and seeing what they have in the front.
Okay, seeing there with a lot of the younger guys getting more playing time with $30 million of contracts being cut to give these guys playing time. Alex, I wanted to ask you about Tim Anderson. When he first got signed back in the offseason, do you think that this is something that that was eventually going to happen, that TA was not going to be the same player? It was just making some type of signing to please fans, to just say, hey, we made some type of major league signing? Or do you think maybe he could have actually turned back the clock? Or again, this is eventually going to happen?
I think one of the biggest reasons that they signed him was to flip him at the deadline. I think that they were hoping that maybe he could fake his way into looking like a good player for 3 or 4 months, but it just never happened. Maybe they were hoping that they would get good defensive production out of him. It was fine. Like Kevin alluded to it before, he played fine defense, but it wasn't good enough to offset just how terrible he was offensively. Like the Marlins haven't had a good offensive shortstop in a while, but at least Miguel Rojas was so good back there that you kind of lived with the low offensive production. Same with like a Danny Maria, if you want to go back several years, stuff like that. Even same with like Joey Wendell. Like I'd rather have had Joey Wendell there because at least Joey Wendell was like above average as a shortstop while he was here. Anderson was average at best, and at times was just downright silly out there. So it just never balanced out. Yeah, just disappointing. But I'm glad that the Marlins were smart, kind of, about it, because it was a 1 year, $5 million deal. That's the exact kind of deal that you give to someone who you're not sure about, as opposed to giving them whatever they gave Avi, like 4 or 5 years of just nothingness. So, that's all there is to it. Now he'll be off the books after this season, and then you can move on to the next guy.
Yeah, and I guess it opens a good conversation of who's next because, you get rid of TA, get rid of Betancourt, get rid of Avi. There's not really much more to really, and I guess dead weight to get rid of, unless you want to say Manuel Rivera, but he's been fine defensively. He had a 2 RBI game the other day. Obviously, that's not going to lead to much, but it kind of starts to tell yourself, they're finally going in the direction where they're going to give guys the opportunity to play. Who would be next to kind of, get rid of at this point? And Emmanuel Rivera, I believe he has some control, but aside from that, you could probably get rid of him. And once the trade deadline also comes, you're going to get rid of a lot of guys.
Yeah. To me, you have 3 options going into next year with shortstop. You either are going to let Brujan play there again. You can have Xavier Edwards play there, but I'm not sure how his defense will translate to shortstop with the arm that he has.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can go out and probably overpay for a shortstop because you absolutely need one. And off the top of my head, I don't even know who the top shortstop free agents are. I haven't even had time to look after this happened.
It's not very good. I haven't looked, but I know it's not good.
And it's not even a great inquiry by me because it's not like they're going to get any of the top guys anyway. But
Willie Adames, Paul DeJong.
Willie Adames is pretty far above and beyond everybody else. I do want to touch on something that Krutchik brought up a few minutes ago that I think is important about. I think this was a genuine trade that could have served a couple different signing, I should say, that could have served a couple different purposes. And the reason why I was pretty critical of this offseason is because of the state of the Marlins farm system. Entering this year, awful. Even with the trades they've made so far, they are just really thin at so many positions, especially across basically every hitting position that they had. In one way that you can try to indirectly improve your farm system is by signing veterans to 1-year deals that you think have decent upside. And then even if the team is struggling at the big league level, hopefully you're able to trade those guys at the deadline to contenders to improve your farm system in return and get prospects back. And TA was the only free agent that they signed in that effort. Ironically, some of their trade chips that they acquired over the offseason, Kevin actually highlighted this, was like in an article, was making that trade to get Calvin Fauché, waiver claim to get Declan Cronin. Those guys are potentially going to be guys that you can flip at the deadline now that their value is up and get something in return. But to make more of a short-term investment on guys like Tim Anderson, even though they would block some younger players from playing in the near term, like if just 1 or 2 of those guys has a decent improved performance that year and you can flip them at the deadline, then that is a way to hurry up your rebuild and getting more prospects in return. So as it turns out, this one, I don't know about the exact timing. I would say that it was evident probably a month ago that TA was not going to be an asset at the trade deadline. But at this point, it was plainly obvious. Like, it's not an overreaction to say he could hit 1,000 between now and the deadline, and he still would not bring back anything just because he has now a 1.5 year track record of being one of the least productive players in baseball. It would have been great to do this with a starting pitcher. Like, not even going to go into examples, but among the free agents out there, a lot of them signed 1-year deals. And it's okay if you miss because this team was a long shot to make it back to the postseason anyway. But to spend more in the short term, potentially, that I thought that was a strategy that could have been worth it to make those investments. Again, this one did not work out, but I don't think that means that the intentions were wrong. Like, I think the thinking was in the right place to do something at this weak position to make an attempt to upgrade. And just because it didn't work out doesn't mean that the process itself was all that flawed, in my opinion.
Yeah. Kevin, I want to ask you, Krutchik brought it up earlier about the team now being more willing to eat these contracts. We're seeing it there, $30 million, Avi Garcia, Chris Bethencourt, Tim Anderson. What do you make of this front office now wanting to improve the team in terms of maybe right now with getting these young guys in, helping out the future and getting out, cutting these guys who are just almost dead weight to the team currently?
I mean, yeah, they're finally doing, I guess, what everyone's been wanting. You know, everyone had been wanting Avi to go for a bit. He's now gone. Obviously, we wish every single player nothing but the best. The Bethencourt one was a little bit surprising in my eyes. I thought he was a fine defensive catcher. Offensively, obviously, just wasn't producing. But, you know, usually you don't see a change in the catching position midway through the season or just during the season in general, unless they're hurt. That obviously wasn't the case with Bettencourt. And then, you know, Tim Anderson just wasn't good. There's no other way to put there. And but yeah, they're finally recognizing that, you know, maybe it's time to look towards the future, give guys in the minor leagues an opportunity. Troy Johnston's. Geez, I mean, they gave Dane Myers the opportunity by DFAing Avi. They let Ali Sanchez, who they brought in via trade, get the opportunity to play catcher. He played 3 out of the 4 games in Philly. So, you know, they're now getting chances to play and kind of give an opportunity to these guys who have something to prove, you know, they have an opportunity to be on this team next season, and they have to show that they could be on here. And that's really where it comes down to, especially with someone like an Xavier Edwards. Can he play shortstop? Because we know he could hit. I mean, that guy could hit over 300 if he wants to, but now it comes down to, can you play shortstop? Can you do it on an everyday basis? Can you show that your arm is still, you know, can you show that your arm is actually good at that position? So that's the ideal example there with someone like an Xavier Edwards. And, you know, we kind of seen it with Otto. You know, Eli kind of touched really quickly with the relievers that they've been able to flip. Obviously, they're not going to flip Otto Lopez, but it's a guy who they've been able to really acquire through waiver claims or whatever it was. And he's now an everyday guy for the Marlins, and potentially he could be on this team next season, you know, him and Xavier Edwards and that infield.
Yeah, Nate, I want to ask your thoughts looking at their Xavier Edwards. What do you hope he can bring to the team? Again, playing shortstop, it seems like maybe every day now, maybe for the rest of the season with Vidal Brujan. What do you hope to see from X? And maybe do you think this is his audition to be the starting shortstop opening day next year?
Yeah, for sure. I mentioned it in my post earlier. I think this is going to be his extended look. Fans and us alike have been really bantering for Edwards to finally get his chance. I mean, he doesn't need to win another batting title in AAA. I mean, we've seen this before. We know what he can bring at the plate. I'm more so interested in what he can bring defensively. Sorry, I'm saying super loud here. At shortstop, he's kind of questionable. His arm strength, we know, has not really been there. I mean, honestly, I'd like to see him kind of work in the outfield a little bit just because of how athletic he is. I don't think Skip really wants that, but I think, you know, like I mentioned earlier, 25 games under 500, you might as well get guys like him reps. I talked to him pregame. He said he just really wants to show what he can do, and he has a lot to prove. So, you know, I hope he can really just settle in here, first of all, because, I mean, he was only up for 3 games against Cleveland, and I sent him right back down. So I think him getting at-bats, seeing Major League pitching more often will, you know, help him out. And I have high hopes for him. As long as he figures it out defensively, I think he can be, you know, potentially starting next year. So he just, like you said, this is really his audition. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Yeah. To remind people, they did him dirty when they called him up last month. He came up when both Otto went on paternity leave and TA went on the bereavement list. And I mean, I was convinced that they would not bring him up for for just a cup of coffee, that if he was going to come up at all, then he was going to stick around somewhere in the infield. And if you remember, he was up for 3 games. He played 3 straight days at shortstop. And overall, he did all right. And then they sent him right back down. So we were fooled one time. I'm much more confident this time around that he's actually going to be on this roster the rest of the season, as long as health permitting, he's able to do that so far. It's yeah, I remain concerned about the defensive fit at shortstop. He's said the right things and he's done the right things to try to improve his arm strength and his arm accuracy. And it's still, you'll see it over an extended sample, even compared to TA, to be honest. It's a problem. And now that doesn't mean he can physically play the position. Like it's just that we'll have to make up for it offensively a lot. And the ceiling on him being able to make up for it offensively is a little limited just because he doesn't hit for power at all. I mean, coincidentally, he did hit a home run at AAA just a few days ago. One of his final days before being called up, he hit a 400-foot home run. So he gets the right pitch in the right situation under the right weather conditions, and he can hit one over the fence, which is actually more than you can say for TA. So, yeah, I think the timing of this switch from TA to Edwards, it might actually have something to do with just the last few games where, as concerned as they are about Edwards' defense, you see that TA at the big league level makes some pretty egregious defensive mistakes at inopportune times. As limited as Edwards' power is, you saw him just a couple days ago physically hit the ball 400 feet, which is something that, frankly, TA did not show any ability to do over the last couple of years right there. So it got to the point where I don't think anybody in the organization is convinced that Edwards is the answer to play every day, but it just became clear that TA is no longer was somebody worth blocking him. That they'd run out of reasons to say that Edwards should still be in AAA when he really has nothing left to prove offensively down there in terms of bat to ball, getting on base, his base running, etc. So yeah, these last few days just really drove it home that the bar is so low for Edwards to clear in order for him to become an upgrade. And yeah, so I think this is a popular change, but yeah, I'll just remind people that there's a risk that this does not work out. So just hoping for the best right here. This is why you give guys opportunities to hopefully prove you wrong and show that they're capable of more than you expect of them when you bring them up.
Yeah,
and for whatever it's worth.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Nate.
Go ahead. You're good, Patrick. Go ahead.
For whatever it's worth with Edwards, he's a good fielder. Like, he fields the ball well. I trust him out there to make the play. It's just that throw over. Like, it's one of the weaker arms I've seen in the majors on the infield. But someone's got to play shortstop, and they've got a small log jam at second base. Not a great one, but it's there.
Yeah, and he was asked pregame, I believe it was by Justin Blaylock, about his ability to play shortstop, and he seemed adamant. He's like, I can play the position. So it sounds like he does have something to prove, because you could honestly say that's kind of been what's holding him back, other than TA, of course, from really having the confidence from everyone that he can do it every day. So, like I mentioned, he's going to have the look. So it's up to him at this point.
Yeah, and currently at the shortstop position, for any of you four who want to answer this, again, with Xavier Edwards, just how would you rank maybe the other options, again, with Vidal Brujan, and maybe you can even put Otto Lopez or whoever the case may be. How confident you are in the shortstop position the rest of the season? Would you want Xavier Edwards, Vidal Brujan? How would you look at the shortstop position for the rest of this season? Not looking at 24 or any other years, but for the next 80 or so games coming up for the Fish.
Actually, what is Otto Lopez's experience playing shortstop? Just because out of all the guys, we've made a lot of mention about it over the last couple weeks. He's the best infielder that they have right now. I wonder if that would translate to shortstop. I don't really know what his arm's like, but in terms of fielding the ball, like, he's got to be the best on the infield right now.
I mean, yeah, I think Otto Lopez originally came up as a shortstop, and then they moved him off to second base. He had been playing a little bit of third when he first came up here, but I just don't know. I think right now Xavier Edwards is probably the best option, maybe Brujan as well, but I mean, Skip made it clear Xavier Edwards is going to play every single day. It's a good discussion to have when you have someone on an off day, like when X goes on an off day, but it's probably going to be Vidal Brujan replacing him. So, we're looking at this year, it's going to be Xavier Edwards, and maybe next year, then that's a conversation we'll have during the offseason.
Yeah. So what's a little complicated is that Otto has been so great at second base. Any way you look at it, he has been one of the better defensive second basemen in baseball. So there's that thinking that you don't want to mess with a good thing when it's working the way that it has. In my opinion, I think the ideal setup is to have Otto try to move him to shortstop and have Edwards play second base on a regular basis. Because I think the ceiling defensively is a little higher for Otto because of arm strength. And a lot of the plays that he makes at second base are based on athleticism that will still translate to shortstop, to answer your question about his experience, in his minor league career was split almost down the middle between second base and shortstop in his career. It was 150 starts at short, 161 at second base, and he bounced around quite a bit. He's played a little outfield, played quite a bit of third base as well, but he was mainly split dead even between second and short. So there is not a good answer. That goes back to why they signed TA in the first place. And yeah, even now, technically Otto came here more recently than TA did. He was just claimed at the start of the regular season. There's not a good answer. There's not like a convincing answer here, but I do think that next year you may see if Otto keeps it up offensively enough to be on the big league roster. I think Otto is a more realistic shortstop candidate than Edwards would be.
I will say with Brujan, like he seems to have gotten better as the season goes on at shortstop. It's just in terms of outs above average by StatCast, it's the best position that he plays. Now it's a low bar to clear because he's not great at third base at all. Hasn't played a whole lot at second base, but he's gotten better. I kind of liked him out there when he was getting consistent playing time in May, when Tim Anderson was out originally on the IL.
Yeah, to me, maybe we're a little too quick to dismiss Brujan because he has had some glimpses earlier in the year, right in the aftermath of the Arise trade, and as you said, when TA was out on the IL. So that stretch for most of May when he was playing a lot was all right. But I just look at the underlying stuff with him, and I think offensively, I'm still not sold. This is a guy that each of the last 3 years in the majors did nothing with the Rays, and that's why they were able to essentially give him away this offseason. And I think if under an extended sample that he's the guy of that trio. I have the least confidence in him being able to hit at the big league level enough to stick around. But again, this is the part of the season and the team in this situation where you kind of find out what these guys can actually do when you expand their playing time.
Yeah. And I think it's a perfect time to end it now, Eli, to go into a little break, a little flip fish, and just to let everyone know when we come back from Flip Fish, when Eli announces it, we're going to talk some future games talk with Kevin and get a little thoughts there with everyone else on the round table. We'll talk a little bit about the Phillies series. Kevin was there, what he saw really quickly before we hop into the Red Sox series. But Eli, what's our Flip Fish?
Flip Fish, as usual, we pick somebody who played with both the Marlins and their opposing team at some point during their major league career. This one is a retired player. I put him right square in the middle difficulty-wise. I have it at a 5 out of 10 difficulty for this first baseman / outfielder who played with the Marlins and the Red Sox, debuted in 98, finished his career in 2009, 14 WAR, 274 career hitter. He was a very good hitter during his career. Not much speed, but 170 career home runs. American guy from California originally, I think. And I guess one hint is that he is still very relevant. I should say he's recognizable in his post-playing career. He's still active, even as a non-player at this point. So we'll go to our break, and on the other side, try to guess who this former Marlin and Red Sox is. Stick with us.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
I think I know that.
I have no clue.
Come on, Kev. He has a show on MLB Network.
The chat figured it out.
I'm thinking about Kevin Millar, but I'm not sure.
There you go. Good
Yeah.
job, Kevin.
Yeah, the show on MLB gave it away.
Perfectly adequate player.
He started his major league career with the Marlins, and the Red Sox were maybe his most famous stop because he was on the 2004 team there, and he played a little bit after that as well.
Fine
I
player.
remember He joined the Fish the year after they won the World Series, and he left this. Then
Yeah.
he left the year before they won it also. So he's like in between all the, you could say the not so fun parts of Fish history.
Yep.
But let's get into the news that was also released earlier today with the Future Stars games. The Marlins will have 2 representatives in the Future Stars game in Texas. Talking about the Future Stars game, we'll have Noblemeyer, Thomas White, 1A, 1B, your number 1 or number 2, however you want to put it, top prospects in the Marlins organization, both having really great starts this season and really have been providing really well innings, strikeouts, everything for the Marlins in this minor league season. Kevin, Thomas White, Noblemeyer, what are you expecting from them in Texas? But first, how they earned their spots on this team.
Yeah, I mean, we consider Thomas White to be the best prospect in the system, and we felt very highly about that after I think we made that in-season change or right after spring training. But yeah, he's been great. There's no other way to say it. They both earned their way to high A Beloit. Thomas has looked really good. Noble, I believe, missed his last start due to I think it's a hip injury, but should be fine. White, just really cool delivery. It's really interesting. His arsenal. Noble with the elevated fastball. It's been really good. The secondary stuff is really good. I mean, there's just not much more to say about these guys. Just very good baseball players. I'm a little surprised they chose 2 pitchers. I thought they would have done someone like a White and a position player or vice versa, Noble and a position player, but both very much deserve it. Probably the 2 of the most marketable players as well on that team. So I don't know how much maybe that went into account, but yeah, last time the Futures game happened, Marlin won the MVP. So maybe one of these guys have the opportunity to do it, although usually you don't see a pitcher win that. But yeah, very well deserved for both. Sanoja could have gone there too. Victor Mesa Jr. Joe Mack really deserved it after his impressive season thus far. But, good choices with Noble and Thomas.
Yeah. Again, 2 of the top pitchers in the Marlins. Eli, with these 2 players, just what do you expect from them, getting this opportunity to showcase yourselves on the big stage and being selected amongst, some of the top players, I should say top Futures players in baseball, what it also means to them as well and the organization.
Yeah, it's unusual to have 2 guys that are both this young to do it as well. There's a bias. They lean usually towards guys that are closer to being big league ready when they put together these rosters. And yeah, these 2 were both just like, this is their first full season in professional baseball. This is just 1 year removed from being drafted that they've both made it to this point. I wish that the selection process was a little bit more about production over just prospect hype. Because as Kevin mentioned, Noble has had a minor injury that limited his production to this point in the season. Thomas has thrown 56 innings, Noble just 46, and the results and definitely the underlying numbers favor White a little bit more than Noble does. So I would, if it was my choice, I would have done everything possible to feature somebody like Joe Mack, who has been playing every single day at the AA level, and this might be the last year that he hasn't had a chance to be in a Futures game because he might be in the big leagues at this time of year from now, Joe Mack. Whereas both of these 2, even if everything goes right, they're still going to have an opportunity next year to be in the Futures game. They're going to be 20 years old. They're not going to be in the Marlins rotation at 20 years old. I don't think. I mean, we've seen it with Yuri, but he's a freak. Yeah. So it's possible, but that's something that I had in mind as well. So it's impressive, and I'm excited for them. You would expect that at least one of them gets to pitch in the game at some point. And specifically with White, he just flew up MLB Pipeline's just updated top 100 list. He went up 27 spots from number 85 overall to number 58. And they're even higher on Noble than they are on White. They have Noble at number 41. All things considered, it is relatively close between these 2 guys. And yeah, overall, it's just been a realistic best case scenario for what you could have expected from these guys from where they were a year ago being drafted. To have both of them have success and to show improvement as overall pitchers as well, for both of them to avoid significant injury, very minor concern with Noble, but all things considered, their elbows look good, their shoulders look good. That's the most important thing. Yeah, they've been a really bright spot that are lifting up this farm system kind of by themselves. There's just not that many organizations in all of baseball that have 2 pitchers that are this exciting in their farm system right now.
Yeah, I believe you could tell me if I'm wrong. The last time Marlins had 2 pitchers in the Futures game, it was Max Meyer and Jake Eater, I believe. Someone could tell me if I'm wrong on that. So maybe I could tell you a little bit there how that might turn out for them, but who knows. But Alex, saying these 2 guys, 2 young pitchers, Eli mentioned, again, not even turning 20. Just what do you hope to see from these 2 pitchers? And again, maybe what drives in terms of excitement for a fan base, just putting these 2 players out there against some of the other top prospects in baseball?
I just want to see, you kind of hit on it there with that last point that you made, just seeing them perform against the best of the best, not just the guys in the Florida State League that they see all the time, but some of the best from around the country, guys that might be in, well, now they're in Beloit, so it's not the Florida State League, but guys around the country, different leagues, not just high A, but around all the different affiliated leagues, being able to do it in front of a larger crowd. It's obviously not the all-star sold-out crowd, but it's still probably going to be more than they've had so far at any point in their professional careers. It'll be cool for them to pitch in a stadium with 3 tiers. I forget what it's called, but I've heard from some of the old school guys that there's something that happens to a pitcher when they're pitching in a ballpark that has like 3 seating tiers as opposed to the 1 that you see at Roger Dean. So I'm interested in that. Just having them go on the biggest stage that they've been in their professional careers. And actually, neither of them went to college. So I guess this would be the biggest stage that they've ever been on. So I think that'll be fun. Yeah,
it's an important test for guys to pitch in front of a crowd where a lot of fans have white shirts in the background. That's a big adjustment, I hear, to the players. They've never been there before.
Hey, I mean, it's also a good opportunity to, at least for Marlins fans to see the upcoming top prospects that could potentially be dealt in the trade deadline. This is a good opportunity for those guys to showcase against the general managers. I assume there'll be people watching. It's obviously it's a game, but it's not the most competitive thing in the world. But good opportunity to see the potential future prospects that the Marlins could nab at the trade deadline. They could snag out there.
Yeah, I should explain what I'm showing right here. LMF was asking about it in the chat. This is from an article on a site where I finally made a list. I think it's the only one out there that shows every Marlins player that has ever participated in the Futures game. So it's usually 1 or 2 a year. Funny enough, 2019 was the exception. They got 3 that year. Isan, Monte, Sixto. You could rewind and go back to that year,
and you're out.
Those three were all kind of interesting guys. They were having good seasons down there. And Sixto, especially of all, like he was maybe the top pitching prospect in all baseball at that very moment. And yet the way that they've turned out just 5 years later, where all those guys still relatively young. And I don't know what Isan is doing. I think he's still playing independent ball. Monte is a college football player. And Sixto is
SEC.
And Sixto is just throwing bullpen sessions on the side, rehabbing from his shoulder issue after struggling quite a bit this season, coming back from that injury odyssey. But usually it's 1 or 2. The ones that are highlighted in this, it's based on career WAR. I highlighted the guys that have actually been relatively good over. I used 5 wins above replacement as the cutoff. So Yelich clears. Domingo Germán is slightly above that bar. Josh Naylor is already over that. Brian Anderson. Yuri will be there, we think, in a couple of years. But if you look at the whole list on the site, going back, I think I can even pull up the first screenshot of this from the early years of the organization. This goes back to 1999. AJ Burnett was part of that first group of guys that went to the Futures game for the Marlins. Josh, and then Miggy, back-to-back years, Miguel Cabrera. Look at that. Miggy and Adrian Gonzalez in the same year for the Marlins.
Love it.
As we know, Adrian Gonzalez was traded in 2003 before getting to the big leagues. So there's just a glimpse at that. Having Jose and Yelich in the same group is also pretty impressive right there.
Oh, interesting. Miggy went twice.
Yeah, Miggy went twice, and also Yelich did go twice. He went in 2012, and then right after the cutoff, he went by himself the next year in 2013.
Interesting.
I want to ask you, Nate, with both these guys, Noble and Thomas, you have the lefty, you have the righty. Again, maybe not as competitive, but again, these guys want to show out and be competitive against their peers, against, GMs, because, it'll be the world watching, at least the baseball world and biggest stadium that they've ever played in. Do you think maybe what player has the edge? Who do you think might be more favorable in this? Who do you think might do a little better? Would you have more leaning towards White, towards Noble? Who do you think maybe will do better, maybe has more to prove in this stage?
I think more to prove, honestly, would be Noble. I mean, Noble was drafted around, he's drafted way higher. And, like Eli mentioned, White's trying to overtake him as a top prospect in the system. I do think White has a better chance of doing better as well. He's kind of more rare than Noble. Noble's, hard throwing righty and wipeout slider, wipeout off speed. But Thomas White, I mean, upper 90s as a lefty, as a starter. I mean, you really don't. I mean, a little bit more often now, but still, it's kind of more of a rarity, especially with how simple his delivery is. I think he has a chance to really show out. Maybe, MLB Pipeline has elevated them. I mean, it's even better chance for him to show that he is that alpha in the farm system. I mean, I think he is, in my opinion. He has, like I said, a high 90s fastball. He's had that since he was very young. I do remember that. Thomas White has been the best. He was the best player in the 2023 class for as long as I can remember. So I think this is going to be his chance to really show out in front of a bigger audience and against higher competition as well. He is from Massachusetts, so he doesn't have quite the good. He hasn't basically as good competition back in his high school days either. So this is a really good chance for Thomas White to really show who he is.
Yeah, I still can't believe Max Myers still count as a prospect. Seeing him in the top 100 list, that still always blows my mind looking at that. Yeah. But if we do have about 20 or so, 25 minutes left, I'll let you guys choose. Would you guys want to talk a little bit of Phillies, or do you want to go ahead and talk about this Red Sox series coming up?
Sorry about the Sox.
Yeah, move right ahead with the Red Sox here. First thing I'll start off is just pull up the wild card standings and where they are in the American League so far, right here this season. They are the first team out of the AL wild card mix so far. I think a little bit better than people expected. They were entering the season. Most people would have the Marlins and the Red Sox in a similar bucket in terms of a team that was probably going to be slightly below 500 that had some strengths and some flaws. And all things considered, they are slightly overperforming, but at the same time, on the outside looking in. So, they are. We'll get into it. They're a fascinating
the Red Sox
team.
Came in with a lot of injuries, I believe, coming to the season. They signed Lucas Giolito, and he almost instantly got hurt for them. Yeah. I know starting pitching was really tough for them. And offensively, it was just seemingly Rafi Devers and trying to get something out of Tristan Casas, and Jarren Duran looks pretty good this season. So I'll definitely overperforming in that. And I would say starting pitching as well, because it seemed like beginning of the year they were desperate for starting pitching with just how many injuries they had on that front. And now it just seems like everything is somewhat coming back together for the Red Sox.
Yeah. Well, I guess Nate, before Nate gets out of here, we should actually go to a quick injury update before his background noise gets a little too loud over there at the press box right here. So I think the most notable thing here is actually that Hoeing. Did you see Hoeing around the team, Nate? I think Hoeing is like back from his rehab assignment and just waiting for a spot to open up in the bullpen.
Yes, Hoeing is with the team. It was noted that Hoeing is here. I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but he is here. Also notable was Weathers is going to be reevaluated in 1 to 2 weeks. Christina of MLB.com asked for this, a little setback. Skip said it wasn't. He said it's just, he said it was going to be 4 to 6 from the start. So essentially after the All-Star break, you can start throwing again. Also, Eli did mention the 6-0 bullpen. Honestly, he did throw 26 this time around. Interesting number. I don't know. I've really never seen a 26 pitch bullpen thrown, but I guess that's what it has to be. Skip also mentioned Edward Cabrera. Potentially his last start in AAA, depending on depending on where they are in the rotation to bring Eddie back. And Otto Lopez, he was in today's lineup before the game. He was scratched because I believe in the weight room pregame he felt a little tightness in his back, but he's available off the bench. And Isaac had one more question to Skip about Jazz potentially coming back to the middle infield with TA's departure. Skip had a stern and quick no, so I guess we'll have to wait and see on that type stream, I guess. But that's pretty much it for the park. One more thing I will mention is that the pregame VIP batting practice experience was flooded. It's the most packed I've seen here with a bunch of Red Sox fans. There's a good amount of red. It's not looking like the Caliente red that I that I know, but it's there's a lot of red in the sand, so it might be a little bit more Red Sox favor, but we'll see.
Yeah, Red Sox fans definitely travel well. But did Skip say something on Sixto? I know you mentioned he was pretty stern on Sixto in Philly, so I don't know if he spoke on that status and the bullpen.
Yeah, no one even brought him up. They were more so concerned about Eddie and Weathers, but yeah, I mean, hopefully he continues to progress. We'll see. But I'd say the biggest thing is Eddie potentially rejoining the rotation, just potentially showing what he can do. Hopefully stay healthy, and then Weathers, of course, potentially joining the team after the All-Star break.
The last thing I have for Nate is I think today they were supposed to be passing out those new crowns from BK, the Marlins and Burger King co-branded paper crowns at the front of the gates. Can you see anybody from your vantage point that's wearing those?
I can spot out one right now. I was walking to the clubhouse. There was a massive one. Like, it was huge. He was on, I believe the throne or so. It was on some type of throne. I haven't seen the throne before, but they did have a huge one. I can see a little bit now. Now that you mentioned, I was really not looking out for that, but they do. There are a few. So I guess mission successful. I have seen a few out there.
No Whoppers in the press box, Nate?
Not today. Ice cream, yes. Whoppers, no. Maybe after the we'll see.
But again, we'll see Nate later when he has his prediction video. Always great having Nate. You can follow him, Isaac, for coverage on today's game as they face off against the Boston Red Sox. Now let's go a little bit in this Red Sox lineup because it feels like this team is very defensive heavy. You look at the beginning with Jarren Duran, who has, I believe, a 5 WAR coming into this game right now. And then you look at Willier Abreu, who's looking like one of the top rookies in this season so far for them. And, of course, Rafi Devers, who, again, always can be an MVP candidate. Tyler O'Neill, who seems like he's hitting 10 home runs one week and then on the IL the next week. So really difficult there to really construct with him. But Eli, with this Red Sox lineup, what are you seeing? Who will give Marlins the most trouble? And what do you hope to see pitchers against this team?
I want to just shout out Tyler O'Neill because he was somebody that I was kind of clamoring for the Marlins to trade for. The Cardinals, with 1 year left to control, they had some internal drama with him. They had a surplus of outfielders. They weren't really looking for much. The Red Sox picked him up for a couple spare pieces, a couple like fringy relievers in an offseason trade. He was, to me, like a great discount replacement for Jorge Soler in the power department. As you touched on, he's kind of on pace for very Soler-like numbers this season. When he's been healthy, he's on like a 40 home run pace. If you even include the injuries, then he's on his way towards easily clearing 30. And he's a guy that he was not going to save the Marlins season, but he would be one of those guys we talked about where you're able to flip him at the deadline and get a lot more in return than what you gave up originally because he is a pending free agent, but he would have made, in my opinion, the season a lot more enjoyable for this Marlins team that desperately needs any offense that it could get. And so it's been a bummer to see him disappeared. But yeah, but overall, you touch on things. And just to acknowledge something in the chat, Tristan Casas, unfortunately, still hurt. He's been one of their big missing pieces early in the year. A lot of people wrote off the Red Sox when he got hurt way back in April. It may have been. It was at least 2 months ago. He's getting close to returning, but it sounds like that's going to happen next week, if not right after the break. So he's not going to be involved in this series. Maybe that makes it a little bit more competitive than you would originally think.
Yeah, a couple guys from Miami on this team: Tristan Casas, Romy Gonzalez, who in TUM. Alex, overall, what do you hope to see maybe on this Red Sox side, this Marlins side, either of the lineups? What are you hoping to see the most from this series from either team?
Going back to just the conversation we had before, I just want to see Xavier Edwards in there and see what he can do in a larger sample size over a full week, seeing as how it's not just going to be this series, but I think it'll actually be going forward as well, as opposed to last time where he kind of got screwed over by only getting the 3 games. So I'm excited for that. Excited to see if Jake Berger continues to hit well. He was hitting pretty well in Philly. So I'm excited to see if that where was it that he got back on track a little bit?
Arizona. That was a while ago.
Who am I thinking of that hit the home run in Philly?
Well, Berger did hit one, but DLC hit one as well. I think Nick Gordon also hit one.
Yeah, Nick Gordon.
Berger had like one good game in Philly. Aside from that, it was it was very good.
Well, I'm just excited to see what this infield does this week.
Yeah. And from there, we can also talk about the pitching matchups. I don't know if you have that, Eli. The graphic for this. Just really interesting pitching matchups as well today by NTB also. So that's why all the fans are there. I don't know about they want crowns or it's because the Red Sox. They're all there to see Bay also go again for the Fish, going up against Critter Crawford, who's having somewhat of a good year this year. And then going in the rest for the Marlins. Tomorrow's will be very interesting with Trevor Rogers going against Brian Bale. Brian Bale, I believe, signed a $50 million contract, I believe, a couple weeks ago, and that's kind of been underperforming that ever since signing that deal. And for the last game, Kyle Tyler against Nick Pivetta, who, again, numbers show you there, but, again, kind of having a pretty good season. Eli, what do you hope to see from this on the pitching side? Is there a certain matchup? Is it that Trevor Rogers, Brian Bale game? Is it today? Is it that final one on July 4th? What do you hope to see from these interesting pitching matchups?
Just like everybody else, I'm going to be laser focused on Kyle Tyler, his start on the 4th of July. Both of his outings have kind of been carbon copies of each other, where there's been more positive than negative, but also the leash has been very short, even in Philly, where things were going pretty well. And then as soon as there was a sign of trouble in the 5th inning, even when his pitch count was in decent shape, you go to the pen. So I think he is the likely odd man out of this rotation when Edward Cabrera gets back. The way things line up, Edward could be on track to return when that Kyle Tyler spot comes up again in the rotation after this. So this might be his last stands. If the organization clearly sees him kind of more as a long reliever type, doesn't want him going 3 times through the order, then there's probably not a room for him on this pitching staff anyway. So that could be the guy that potentially, if he does struggle, and he hasn't genuinely struggled his first 2 starts, but if he does have real struggles, I think that would make it a pretty easy decision in order for them to clear that spot to bring Edward back. It's a big test for him. In addition to that, with Bayozo as well, I pointed this out quickly on an article on the site that he, as impressive as he was against the Royals, he got kind of fortunate that for whatever reason, they didn't put very many lefties in their lineup, only 2 of them. Whereas tonight, if we go back to the lineups really quick, the Red Sox have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lefties in there. So going from 2 lefties to 6 is going to be a very big test for him as well.
Yeah, and this is something that Skip really emphasizes a lot in its first pitch strikes. Jeez, was it bad in that series against Philly. I think the highest one actually came from, I want to say Chirinos, close to 60%, but it's really about getting ahead of the count, and thankfully, I think in multiple situations, every single guy that pitched against Philly was able to kind of bounce back into it. But first pitch strike has been huge for this team, and it continues to be, and it really was an issue in Philadelphia. Not something I asked because just Skip, that's kind of the first thing you'll always mention in a press conference, that percentage. But yeah, I mean, Trevor I think had the lowest, if not it was Tyler. So really just struggles on that aspect, and really keeping the ball on the ground. I mean, that's something that we're not going to, I think, see it from this series, but definitely the White Sox, it'll be definitely a topic of discussion, just because Chirinos and both Munoz were not able to keep the ball on the ground at all. I think it was 1 ground out for each. Aside from that, everything else was fly balls, and well, obviously it leads to homers, and both Chirinos and Munoz did give it up. Thankfully for Tyler, a lot of it was on the ground, and same goes with Trevor. I think Trevor's been looking a lot better lately, and I think Aura mentioned this in our podcast, Eli, on Unfiltered, that could probably be a nice trade deadline kind of to move. Houston would love to use someone like a Trevor Rogers, and God, any team that really needs a young, controllable pitcher like Trevor, someone that's kind of reinvented himself. But good opportunity for Trevor, I think, tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. After Tanner, would you guys say that Trevor is maybe the most likely player to get traded at the deadline?
No. I'll let Crutch.
As I said in my roundtable answer, for people that haven't seen it, we offer predictions for the non-rentals there. And I think Jazz, I think they're going to sell high on Jazz at this point when he's healthy, when he's been relatively consistent. More so than Trevor. Trevor would be an interesting one, as Kevin noted, as Aram explained on our pod, but I would still be a little surprised if something gets done for Trevor at this time.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It definitely wouldn't be going to a playoff contender. I think if you're getting Trevor, it's because you want to work on this project that you know will take kind of like an older version of Ryan Weathers, where you want to work on him for the next half, for the second half of the season, during the off season into the spring, and then have him ready for next year. I don't think there's going to be anybody that's going to overpay for a playoff push with Trevor.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that happens in his start against the Red Sox. But if you guys are ready, I think it's the perfect time to head into predictions.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to like toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
Yeah, let's see. I might actually not have the leaderboard handy on this.
Oh, let's not show it.
moment.
Let's not show the Phillies leaderboard. The Phillies results. Oof.
Yeah, that
That
was
was
one of
really
our
bad.
lowest scoring
That was
prediction
bad.
series. Hardly any. With one of our super subs, Alec got perfection on that, but only one other person got points of any kinds from that series split that we had going on right there. But I do have our super sub predictions for this particular series, and it is split right down the middle so far with what I've logged in here. Need to include LMF's prediction. He's the Marlins winning 2-1. If I include that, it is directly split down the middle between people picking the Red Sox and people picking the Marlins here. And nobody has it as a sweep. I think it's going to be 2-1 in either direction. We talked about Duran and his breakout year as an overall player. So he's a MVP candidate. And let's play our press box predictions as well from Nate and from Isaac Azoot at Lone Depot Park.
All right, live from Lone Depot Park prediction time. Isaac, go first.
I think Miami takes 2 out of 3. I'm going to go with Jazz Chisholm Jr.
I'm going to stay positive also. I think the Marlins will take 2 out of 3. My MVP is going to be three righties. Jesus Sanchez. Back to you, Eli.
Yeah, so if we include their stuff, predictions actually skew towards the Marlins instead of the Sox right here.
All right. So if you have that music, Eli, let's start off. Always lead off for us in prediction, Mr. Kevin.
I'm going to go with the Red Sox taking 2 out of 3 here. And my series MVP will be Mr. Tyler O'Neill. He has been great for the Red Sox, and he'll keep it up here in Miami.
All right. Eli.
As usual, I'm going to copy Kevin. I'm joking about that. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but I am going directly with what he just said right there. 2 out of 3 for the Red Sox. Tyler O'Neill, I guess a hypothetical revenge series, as if Marlins should have traded for him this season. I think he's going to hit at least one of them out of Lone Depot Park this series.
I have almost the same. I have the Red Sox taking 2 out of 3, and my MVP be Wilyer Abreu, having a breakout rookie season. Watching him in the final months of the season, he has 2 home runs this series. Alex.
I have Marlins 2 out of 3. I think my MVP will be Jazz. I think he's going to copy what he did last year against the Red Sox. It was probably one of his best series in a short season last year for him. So, yeah.
All right. As you can see there, good amount of fish, good amount of Red Sox. Go ahead, check out the game. About to start soon for myself, Daniel, for Eli, for Alex, for Kevin, who had to go really quickly, for Nate, Isaac in the press box. This is FOF Live, presented by Burger and Hicks. Go Fish.